Straight up with the warning for you, I'm about to give you TMI. I'm in my very late 40s, and I still have a regular menstrual cycle. It shows up every single month like a complete non-event. Sure, it's changed in that it's shorter in duration and lighter on the lighter days, and the one heavy day is ever so slightly heavier, but on the whole it's a complete non-event. And I believe that's possible for you too, so that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to look at why periods become problematic, how we can resolve that using nutrition and lifestyle measures, and then also how we can support that with supplements and homeopathic remedies. Hi, I'm Chelsea Green, holistic hormone specialist, and I help women transition from peri to post-menopause naturally using homeopathy, herbs, nutrition, and lifestyle medicine. If that sounds like the type of thing you're interested in, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video. When I'm taking a client case, I always ask about period health, because period health can tell us so much about our overall health. But quite often the answer I get is, oh, they're normal. And I'm always amazed at what women will put up with under the guise of thinking it's normal. For example, it's not normal to have painful periods, to use pain medication every single month, to have heavy periods, clotted periods, PMS, breast tenderness, backache, and so forth. In actual fact, your period should turn up on time, symptom-free, and be a complete non-event. Cycle length should be roughly 28 days, and the bleed should be between 2 and 7 days. But we're all individuals, and what we're looking for is regularity. So your cycle might be slightly shorter or slightly longer than 28 days, and your bleed might be 3 or 4 days. That's fine as long as it's regular. The color of the bleed should be red to reddish brown, and small clots are normal, large clots are not. And you shouldn't need to change your pad, tampon, cup, whatever you use, any more than every 2 hours, and definitely not needing to change overnight. Things that can influence your period health: the state of the gut, liver, bowels, nutritional deficiencies, blood sugar imbalances, under-exercising or over-exercising, stress levels, toxin exposure, contraception use, and trauma. But in addition to that, from the age of around 35 years, ovarian function begins to slow down and we start to move into those perimenopausal years. Initially, progesterone falls first and we end up in a state of estrogen dominance. That's because the progesterone level is so low, the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, aren't in balance. But as we move through our late 30s, early 40s, and beyond, estrogen begins to fluctuate, and so we can have a state where we have low estrogen levels as well, but it's still be dominant because it's still not in balance with progesterone. And so we can see a whole mix of symptoms going on because we have this complete state of flux between the two hormones. So with the low progesterone state, we might see irregular periods, light periods, spotting in between periods, periods with headaches and migraines. And in an estrogen dominant state, we might see anger, irritability, PMS, breast tenderness, heavy flooding periods, fibroids. And with low estrogen, we might see hot flushes and night sweats, mood changes, irregular or no period at all. So you can see we have this huge flux in hormones and in the symptoms that you might see. Typically what I see in clinic is that in the beginning of perimenopause, the symptoms remain the same each month, and then as we move closer and closer towards menopause, that's when we see symptoms that might change from month to month. But of course, we're all individuals and everyone will have their unique way of presenting. For some women, they might have problems before the period. Other women might have problems before and during the period. Some women might have problems just during the period. And for other women, it might be at ovulation or at the time where one would be expecting to ovulate. So where do we even start? First of all, I've got 2 videos, one on estrogen dominance in perimenopause and the other on increasing progesterone naturally. So after this video, I would recommend going back and watching both of those. And secondly, grab my free download, Thriving in the Menopause. The link is in the notes. The download is focusing on reducing stress levels, and that is relevant to you here because our first tip is look at your stress levels. When you are highly stressed, when you're busy all the time, doing all the things, giving all of yourself away, the body has to produce high levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and that comes at the expense of progesterone production. That is high levels of stress, lower levels of progesterone. So I would suggest looking at where are you taking on too much, where can you say no, where can you start delegating, and where can you start resting. Whilst that is what's going on a physical level, looking at this holistically, we need to be working with the energy of the cycle. So our menstrual cycle has its whole unique energy system, and the more that we can live in accordance with that energy, the easier our cycle will be. In the build up to our period, we're in our autumn phase and we should be slowing down. Movement should be gentle, foods should be nourishing. We're preparing for our winter hibernation, i.e. the period. If you'd like to know more about how to live in accordance with your cycle, then pop the words energy of the cycle in the notes below and I will do a video on it. And yes, you can use this even if you're not having a cycle by following the phases of the moon. So addressing stress, slowing down, nourishing yourself is absolutely essential, especially in that time before the period and during the period. Tip number 2, of course, is going to be nutrition. When we have those low levels of progesterone and we have that estrogen dominant state, we want to be focusing on gut, liver and bowel health. Excess estrogen has to be metabolized in the gut, detoxified in the liver and eliminated via the bowel. And if any of these organs are not working properly, if they're a little bit sluggish, then that can cause or exacerbate period issues. So yes, something as simple as being constipated can cause a hormonal imbalance. So you want to be ensuring you have a good bowel movement every single day. And after telling you about my periods, I'm not going to make you look at images of poo, but if you were to Google Bristol stool chart, you can see what a good healthy bowel movement looks like. You're aiming for a number 4 on the chart. So for good gut and liver health and bowel health, actually, we want to be eating lots of fibrous vegetables, lots of leafy greens, pre and probiotics, and particularly for that estrogen dominant state, we really want to be focusing on cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables include cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, leafy greens, pak choi, Brussels sprouts, and they have a compound called DIM, and DIM helps to break down excess estrogen and detoxify it from the body. These cruciferous vegetables also are high in sulforaphane, which helps with both phase 1 and phase 2 of liver detoxification. So really, really important vegetables in terms of estrogen dominance. We also want to be eating sulfur-rich foods, which also helps with detoxification. So that's your onion family, particularly red onion, but all onions, chives, leeks, garlic, and shallots. Bone broths, which are rich in collagen, are also really good for the gut. They help to heal the gut lining and also help with liver health. Bitter foods are great for the liver, so dandelion, milk thistle, rocket, watercress, things like that have a really bitter taste. We also want to be eating anti-inflammatory spices, particularly turmeric, garlic, ginger, and black pepper. And on that front, we also want to remove inflammatory foods, things like gluten, dairy, sugar, corn, soy, processed foods, seed oils, vegetable oils, and alcohol and caffeine if you're particularly sensitive as well. If you have pain in the body, that is inflammation, and eating inflammatory foods is only ever going to make that worse. Another inflammatory food group is conventionally farmed meat and dairy products. Those farming practices tend to be high in antibiotic use and high in hormone use, which you'll be ingesting via the food chain. So if you do eat those foods, I would recommend going for organic. Okay, in addition, we also want to add in progesterone boosting foods, and that's your foods that are rich in B6, zinc, and vitamin C. So for B6, that is sunflower seeds, tuna, salmon, leafy greens, and eggs. And for zinc, you're looking at shellfish, grass-fed beef, chickpeas, lentils, and pumpkin seeds. And vitamin C, of course, is your citrus fruits, berries, tomatoes, and peppers. And actually broccoli. Broccoli is really high in vitamin C, so another reason to eat broccoli every single day. And the final point on nutrition is to include phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens are plant-based estrogens, and no, they don't make the problem worse. They help to balance estrogen levels and to clear out xenoestrogens, those toxic estrogens we get through the environment. So that would be pomegranates, flax seeds, chickpeas, and again, those cruciferous vegetables. And tip number 3 is to watch your toxic load. Many of the toxins in our environment that we come into contact every day via skincare and beauty products are full of what we call xenoestrogens, chemicals that mimic estrogen in the body. They bind to your receptor cells and create hormonal havoc. So we want to be reducing our exposure wherever we can. And so some quick wins for you: avoid plastics, particularly water stored in plastic. plastic, buy organically where you can, filter your water, use clean beauty products and skincare products, cleaning products as well. They can be really toxic. You can make your own cleaning products that are not harmful to your hormones. And as and when you have to change kitchen equipment like pots and pans or spoons and spatulas and things, just try to replace them with a better quality, cleaner product. Teflon, for example, can be really, really toxic to the system, as to can all the plastics like spatulas and spoons and that sort of thing. So just try to replace them as and when. Okay, finally, we've got some supplements and homeopathic remedies that might help. So the first supplement is Agnus castus, which is known to help boost progesterone levels. It's particularly well indicated where you have that estrogen dominant state with heavy painful periods and breast tenderness. Maca is also worth looking at. It's a phytoestrogen, again helps with balancing those estrogen levels. And then I'd be looking at magnesium and an omega-3 fatty acid, both for their anti-inflammatory properties. I like magnesium glycinate, and also with an omega-3 fatty acid, thinking about toxicity, make sure you get a really clean product. I tend to go for a krill oil for this exact reason. I will pop my recommendations in the notes below this video. As always, if you're starting a new supplement and you are on medications, please do check with the inserts that come with your medications to look for any contraindications, and if you're unsure, check with your healthcare provider. So I've got some homeopathic recommendations for you, but first, with perimenopausal symptoms and hormone imbalances, they're what we'd call chronic in nature. Chronic means that they've got long duration, there was never any real sort of clear starting date, and there's no real clear end date. Those kinds of situations you are better off working with a professional for. Whereas an acute situation, acute means that it's a short duration, there's a very clear start, a very clear finish, and usually the symptoms are quite intense. Acutes you can self-prescribe for, so that's what I'm going to cover here today. Actually, before we go to remedies, I want to share with you a tissue salt. So tissue salts, or more accurately biochemical cell salts, they kind of sit between nutrition and homeopathy. So tissue salts are the 12 minerals that we need for healthy cell function, but they are potentized, meaning that they're a 6x potency, so they do have that homeopathic element to them, but essentially they're working on a cellular level, they're feeding the cells, so hence they sit between nutrition and homeopathy. So the tissue salt that is worth looking at is MagPhos, which stands for magnesium phosphate. MagPhos is an antispasmodic remedy, and it's really well indicated in period cramps, period pains, even nerve pain, and it's particularly well indicated for that pain that's better for heat. So if you use a hot water bottle, MagPhos could be a really good remedy, or for that pain which is better for folding forward. So if you crouch over, or if you lay down in a fetal position with your knees brought up into your chest, again that could be a MagPhos picture. So you can get tissue salts in most health food stores and probably even on Amazon these days, and you can take one every 15 minutes until the pain subsides, or you could put it in with some warm water and sip that instead. Okay, so I've got 5 homeopathic remedies for you, and with homeopathy we have hundreds of remedies that cover erratic periods and period issues, long periods, heavy periods, all sorts of issues, and the key is to match the symptoms to the remedy whilst also considering the mental and emotional state. You don't have to match every single element of the remedy. We go for what we call the 3-legged stool, so the remedy must match the top 3 symptoms of the case. So I've got 5 remedies for you, as I said. Each has a different mental and emotional picture, so you can see the different personalities of the remedies, and as I said, there's hundreds of different remedies. These tend to be the top 5 that I prescribe for erratic periods in perimenopause. Okay, the first one is pulsatilla, and the keynote of pulsatilla is changeable. Everything about this remedy is changeable. You might have tears and laughter in one day, you might have heavy flooding periods and scanty periods. Everything is changeable. So the period might be intermittent or irregular, and the flow might be changeable. So when I tend to see this remedy a lot is when I see tearfulness before the period, which is better for consolation, so they want people around, they want the cuddles. They're worse before the period, and the period is, like I said, irregular or changeable or intermittent, and they tend to be worse in a hot, stuffy room, so they like the windows open. By contrast, our second remedy is sepia. Sepia is worn out and indifferent to everyone and everything, and she's particularly irritated by her husband and children, and she dreams signs of escaping and just wants to be left alone. Her periods may have been scanty, but at menopause they tend to become heavier and more painful. And the pains are described as dragging pains. It feels like everything's going to fall out. She can get breast tenderness and backache, particularly weakness in the small of the back, and she can get night sweats before the period. Everything is worse before the period and better for the flow. Okay, our third remedy is calc carb. Calc carb is overtired, overworried, overworked by all their responsibilities, and they end up in a burnt out state where they just can't be bothered. They've lost all motivation and they just can't get on with things. Their periods are too early, too profuse or too heavy and too long, and they tend to get breast tenderness before the period. They can also get night sweats during the period, particularly the head, the chest and the neck, and it's a really intense sweat, like the pillow might be wet with sweat. Okay, remedy number 4 is Kali carb. So Kali carbs tend to be quite dutiful, but they can also become quite rigid and dogmatic and obstinate. They get premenstrual syndrome with breast tenderness, water retention and violent colicky pains. They get long and heavy periods with labor-like pains that is felt into the back, into the hips and down into the thighs. They can get severe backaches before and during the periods, along with swollen and sensitive breasts before the periods, and they are worse 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. so they have that waking at that time. And actually I should say they also get anxiety, which they feel in the stomach, so they might get those upset stomachs before their periods. Okay, my 5th remedy for you is Sabina. They tend to be morose or even melancholic. Their periods are heavy, gushing with bright red blood and dark clots, big clots. Their periods are also painful, with pain from the sacrum through to the pubis, and it's an upward pain. So they might get the shooting up the vagina pain or shooting up the backside pain. And their symptoms are worse at menopause, and also like pulsatilla, they're worse for hot, stuffy rooms. They feel much better for cold, open air. So with these remedies, I would recommend trying them in a 30C potency. You'll be able to pick them up from any homeopathic pharmacy. If you struggle with symptoms before the period, I would recommend taking one remedy morning and night during that time. Equally, if you struggle during the period, you could try a remedy morning and night during your actual cycle. And if you choose the wrong remedy, don't worry, you can't do any harm, it simply won't work. At that point, you just need to revisit your selection, or maybe work with a professional or speak to the homeopathic pharmacy to revise your remedy. If the remedy partially works, like it resolves some of the symptoms, or it helps but doesn't completely resolve them, then again you might need to revise the remedy in terms of frequency or potency. So that's a discussion as well with a professional or with the homeopathic pharmacy. So getting your period back on track in perimenopause is totally possible, but it does take some changes. It takes some recognition that what worked for us in our 20s and early 30s does not work for us anymore. We need to be including those cruciferous vegetables. We need to be eating lots of fibrous vegetables, those sulfur-rich foods and phytoestrogens. We need to be addressing our stress levels and avoiding toxins. And of course, making sure you open your bowels every single day. So I would start with getting those things right and then looking at what else you need to add in terms of supplements and homeopathic remedies. And of course, if you would like some professional help in this regard, do reach out. I have a free 30-minute discovery call. I will put the link to that in the notes below. We can jump on a call, have a chat, see if we're a good fit. So do take advantage of that.